Welcome. Okay.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah.
Cassidy, thanks for being here. There's more, I mean, but. Oh, of course. Oh, I don't have a pen with me tonight. I put them all in another bag. Lisa, thank you, Lisa. Grace.
Good review. I'm getting my fingers in this loop. Today's moment to start. You mean start on gardening? Yes. Yeah. Today was nice.
What do you plan?
But, well, both Anzies and then my daffodils are all coming out, which is great. But they're, you know.
Yeah, some more stuff is coming up.
And then they're freezing.
I have pansies that I take inside every night because the rabbits are eating my flowers.
Last year we had plants, two side plants near one of our back doors, and the rabbits literally ate the whole thing.
Yeah. We can't take, if they're planted in the ground, you can't take them in, but.
Yeah.
And now we can't even shoot a BB gun out of it.
You know, that's how.
I never would have guessed that coming out of your mouth.
No, I took I have a long gun right next to, I'm really a terrible shot, so I don't use it very often.
I know, you didn't see the houses.
I didn't see that going.
one.
I know you are. I know you are.
I really was.
Ride horseback,
You know,
Maybe like
friendly
the next
guys,
Yellowstone.
Said she'd be online, she did.
No, we can't afford
Okay, we'll give it one more minute, give it to her, it's nice to know.
It's a little transportation, but they all be here early.
Central transportation, what would they use?
Yeah, Andrew Kelly's there. So that's 5 of us anyway. Okay, we're just waiting until the clock strikes. Oh, we're excited. 7, 10. I have 7. Yeah, okay. All right, then. Allison tells me we can begin. So, this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Public Facilities Committee. And present at the beginning of the meeting are Councilor Leary from Ward 1, President Laredo from Ward 7, Councilor Getz from Ward 5, and I think we have Councilor Kelly from Ward 3, and Councilor Gentile from Ward 4. Oh, sorry, I thought I was looking at Lisa's and seeing Gentile, sorry. So cancel that Gentile part. I think that's all of us that are here so far. And we have our new committee clerk here for the first time. Or myself, Susan Albright from Ward 2. Lisa Pennell is our new committee clerk. And here assisted ably by Cassidy Flynn, who's our deputy city clerk. And thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for joining this committee. We appreciate that. Okay, our docket item for tonight is 214-24, Department of Public Works requesting to provide an update on the Transportation Network Improvement Plan. So Commissioner Sullivan, would you like to introduce who will be
I will
presenting
take it
tonight?
up. As noted, we're here for our City of Newton Transportation Network Improvement
Do you
Program
want to join
update
us, or does anybody?
at 2025. Conrad will probably join you.
Okay,
Conrad Ledger from Apex and Frank Marinaccio from Apex will be presenting this evening.
okay.
I would really appreciate it if we could hold questions till the end of the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, we're ready when you're ready. Hey, Conrad, come and join us.
All right. Okay, if I stand?
Yeah.
All right, great. So thanks for having us again tonight. I think this is my 7th or 8th time presenting to this group. So happy to be back and happy to provide an update on the Transportation Network Improvement Program. So as you all know, this has been a big initiative for the city over the past 7 or 8 years now. And we're happy to kind of give you a full update, kind of show you where the program is and where the program's going in the future. So with that. So just overall program goals, it's really to strategically improve the city transportation network and looking at roads, sidewalks, bicycle facilities, traffic calming, all encompassing within the program and making sure that we're looking holistically at the overall network. We utilize the infrastructure asset management program to help with the prioritization and keep schedules up to date. And we're using the data that we collect, and I'll get into kind of how some of that is collected here in a minute. But it's really a data-driven decision-making process that we go through to make sure that we're prioritizing the right roads at the right time. And making sure that we're taking a look at the entire network and what's good for the overall network. So just quickly, one of the bases behind this is pavement management. Obviously, the pavement network is pretty significant here in the city. And we utilize pavement management practices to prioritize the roadways and improve the roadway network. So just real quickly, I know that there's some new counselors on this group, so I kind of wanted to start at the beginning, and I'll kind of go through the first few slides pretty quickly because some of you have seen these before. And then from there, we'll get into the actual program itself. So what is pavement management? Pavement management is the practice for planning pavement maintenance to maximize the value of the road network. And one of the keys to this is enabling you to perform the right repairs at the right time, the right roadways. So this is a pavement deterioration curve. And what this shows on the left-hand side here is a roadway that's in brand new condition, just smoothly paved. And what you see here on the bottom is time in years. And then you see the rating of that roadway from poor all the way up to excellent. And you can see here over time, the roadway will deteriorate at certain timeframes, usually in the 10 to 15 year period is when you hit this kind of slope where it deteriorates really quickly. But using pavement management practices, what you have is the ability to perform some maintenance along the way on that roadway to kind of keep that roadway in a state of good repair. So top of the curve treatments are less costly and less intrusive. And the ones further down the curve at the end of the life cycle of a pavement are generally more expensive and more intrusive. I brought this photograph back from, I think, the first couple of times I did this presentation. And this kind of shows, this is a really unique story for those that don't know about it. This is down in Connecticut. This is a real roadway. And what this is the town line goes right down the middle of the roadway through these two communities. On the right-hand side, community 2 believes in, or at the time they believed in doing pavement preservation, which is those top of the curve treatments that keep the roadway in good condition. The one on the left-hand side didn't really like those types of treatments and performing those types of treatments. So this is a story where in 2004, both of the communities got together and they did one roadway project, which is your 2-inch mill and overlay. So that's grinding the roadway down, basically starting with a new roadway. Community 2 approached the community in 2010 and they wanted to do some preservation. Community 1 said, we don't do that stuff. We're just going to let the roadway deteriorate. You do your own thing. So they did a surface treatment and a crack sealing treatment, which is something that you see a lot here in the city of Newton. And then in 2017, this is what the two roadways looked like. And really it's one roadway, but split down the middle. And you can see here that on this side, on community 2, that roadway really just needed more pavement preservation. And the roadway on the left-hand side needed a significant repair, some type of rehabilitation, either mill and overlay or full depth reclamation. Community 1, you can see that you'd much rather drive down the roadway in community 2. So that roadway was kept in good condition, but it actually led to significant cost savings as well, because doing the rehabilitation a second time on the roadway on the left, it was actually 2 times the cost of doing the preservation 2 times. So we like to say that this is the definition of pavement preservation success. So in terms of the infrastructure assessment, I'm gonna go through how we collect some of the data here in the city. So about 279 centerline miles of roadway. And the way that we collect the data is we actually do inspections of the entire roadway network every other year. And we're using the latest and greatest in terms of technology. We've actually changed the technology a couple times throughout this program. And now we're using technology that utilizes both photography and LiDAR to scan the roadways. It allows us to repeat the process after every other year, so that we get results that are comparable apples to apples on an every other year basis. Really cost effective, and we're able to look at the data objectively and repeat that process every 2 years. In terms of analyzing and reporting, so after we get the roadways data back, basically what we split the roadway network from intersection to intersection. So we have reporting on every segment of roadway throughout the roadway network. And what we get back from that analysis is a rating, a 0 to 100 rating, 0 being a roadway in poor condition, 100 being a roadway in very good condition. And we call that a PCI, or a pavement condition index. And what that allows us to do is put each segment of roadway into one of these repair categories. So you have at the top a roadway in very good condition, doesn't need any maintenance at that time. When you get from 90 to 80, it's routine maintenance. And I'll kind of talk about the different treatments that are in these categories in a minute. Then you get from 80 to 70, you're looking at preventative maintenance or pavement preservation. And then when you get from 70 to 50, you're looking at minor rehabilitation. And then here in the city, we from 50 and below, we're doing what's called maintenance overlays. And I'll get into kind of what that looks like. But you can see on the left-hand side, each of these categories has different treatments that you can do within each of those categories. So for routine maintenance, it's fog sealing or crack sealing. For preventative maintenance in the city, we've used bonded wearing course, rubber chip seal, and cape seal. Minor rehabilitation, mill and overlay, and cold in place recycling. And then the maintenance overlays, which I'll talk about in a minute. So the different treatments, I just wanted to give everybody an idea of what those looked like. So crack sealing is in the routine maintenance category. That's the squiggly lines that you see all over the roadway. And what those are meant to do is fill the cracks in the roadway so that water can't get in, freeze over the winter time, and bust out potholes in the winter time. So it's really just preventing the water from intruding into the roadway. Fog seal, which is kind of like, I liken it to sealing your driveway, but it's obviously a little bit more intense than that for a roadway. But it's some sort of spray. It's almost like a sunscreen for the roadway, revitalizing that top layer of the pavement. And then you get into preventative maintenance. One of the major ones that we've used here in the city is called bonded wearing course, or ultra thin bonded overlay. So there's actually very minimal scraping of the existing surface that's there. We do that on areas that need to be patched. And then we come over the top of it with a thin layer of asphalt. And it's done by a special machine. It's really nice because it can move down the street as a train, and is very easy for traffic to maneuver around it because you can put traffic right back on it afterwards. If you went to work before this treatment started and then you came back after work, you would think that you had a brand new roadway at the end of it. Then we're going to get into rehabilitation. So mill and overlay. Milling and overlaying is probably the most common type of roadway treatment, probably in Massachusetts. You're scraping off about somewhere in between 1 inch to 2 inches of pavement that's existing. You're taking that asphalt pavement away, and then you're coming back over the top of it with a new asphalt pavement layer. So it essentially, again, looks like a brand new roadway at the end. Reclamation, we've used that here. That's very intrusive. It's really pulverizing the existing pavement that's there and then coming back over the top of it with a new layer of asphalt. The maintenance overlays, which is on the left-hand side. So we've used this for roadways and local roadways that are in really tough shape, but there's not enough funding to be able to kind of rebuild the entire roadway. It's worked really, really effectively since we implemented that as part of the program, where you're going in, you're doing some spot repairs, and then you're coming over the top surface with a thick layer of asphalt. And making sure that you're meeting in your gutters and the drainage areas as well to make sure that all the water is flowing off the roadway. Last one, cold in place recycling. So we've seen this on Chestnut Street as an example, where it's a type of asphalt recycling. So it's a kind of a green treatment where they go in, they pulverize the first, 2 to 6 inches of asphalt that's there, bring it through a rejuvenator and adding agents to it and putting it back down, and then going over the top of it with some sort of treatment afterwards. So again, trying to use all the tools in the toolbox that are available that are appropriate for the city. I don't want to forget about the pedestrian network. So we do have a full inventory that was completed in May of 2022, where we inspected 415 miles of sidewalk. Actually, city staff actually performed that inspection, and we've been keeping it up to date. What it also found was 5,400 curb ramps in the city. 774 of those have been reconstructed since 2017, and approximately 39% or 2,100 of them are still not really in compliance. So we're still kind of pecking away at those as we go. This inventory is actually going to be updated again, starting, Commissioner, this summer. Yeah, so the goal here is to keep this updated as well, but we do have a full inventory that was completed in 2022. Obviously, the sidewalks don't deteriorate as quick as the roadways, so you can do those over a 3 or 4 year period to do the re-inspections. Program history and results. So this is where we get into the good stuff. So I'll slow down a little bit and kind of explain some of the data that we have. So the roadways were re-inspected in September of 2024. And you can see that when the program started, the overall road network was at a PCI of a 62. This is where the city decided to do a major investment and a program to kind of raise that PCI or the overall ratings of the roadway. You can see that the program now, the overall rating is at a 73.3. So we've made substantial gains in terms of the overall condition of the road network. You can kind of see the chart here where we've kind of charted it on a year-by-year basis based on what was completed that year, and also the deterioration or the harsh winter or a light winter that we've had. That kind of determines how much deterioration happens over a year-by-year basis. So you can see that this chart isn't exactly smooth, but in the end, it's all trending upward. What we will see as the program continues to go on, and for those who were here the first time I did this presentation, we'll see a big gain at the beginning, and then the higher and higher that rating gets, the more difficult it will be to raise it because the bar is set really high. So this is exactly what we intended when we started the program, and it'll continue to get harder to raise that rating. But I will tell you, I've worked in probably over 100 communities in Massachusetts and New England. I would say the average roadway rating for a community is somewhere in the low to mid 70s. So we've gone from a very low rating to kind of catching up to where the average is. So obviously you want to continue to improve that. And I think the city has made a concerted effort to continue to do that. This kind of shows the status of where it is when you break down how many miles of roadway are now in each category. So you can see the roadways in the worst condition down here on the left-hand side, and then how many miles of roadway here in the middle that fall into each of those categories. I think what this is, and the way I like to look at this is kind of your benchmark moving forward. And that 73 rating, now you're comparing off the 73 instead of the 62, right? So as long as you're trending upward on a year-by-year basis, you know your program's working. One of the things I did want to point out here that is pretty significant is since 2018, routine maintenance and no maintenance categories, so those are the roadways in the best condition in the community, have gone from 15% of the total network to 37% of the total network. So many more miles of roadway are in really good condition. One of the ways that we can show that as well is, and one of the goals of the program when we started it was to really focus on improving the roadways that the people travel the most and kind of making sure that we're tracking those separately. And this shows right here, so arterials and collector roadways, and I'll give you some examples of some of those that have been done here in the past couple of years. They started out this program in 2017. Those roadways were rated at a 69.5. They currently now stand at an 81.2, if you were to kind of look at the average of all those roadways. So 11.7 point improvement of the ratings, the average rating of those roadways. Local roadways, we've also made a significant impact there too. 59.3 in 2017, all the way up to a 69.2 in 2025. So a significant difference on both. And on the right-hand side, that map there, that's just highlighting all of the roadways in the community that are classified as arterials and collectors. But more importantly, some of those roadways that have been worked on in the past couple of years, I'll just kind of throw out a couple here. Ward Street, Highland Street, Chestnut Street, Austin Street, Lowell Ave. Those are some of the significant roadways on the arterials and collectors that you've seen work performed on over the past couple of years. To the overall paving history, I'm not going to go through each of these years, but this gives you a year-by-year breakdown of what roadway treatment was performed and how many miles of roadways and how many square yards of road were constructed on a year-by-year basis. The big total on the bottom here, 90.87 miles of roadway. A lot of roadway has been paved. This does not include roadways in that routine maintenance category. We kind of kept those out because those are sporadic, and you might actually do one segment of roadway multiple times in a 7-year period to make sure that you keep it in good shape. So this is just kind of all the major paving projects that have happened here in the city since 2017. Looking at the pedestrian network, major sidewalk construction, we wanted to note how many miles of sidewalks and how many curb ramps have also been worked on over that time period. And the work, as like everything, it's approximate, but we try to track these on a year-by-year basis as we complete the construction to make sure that we're keeping record of how many miles and how many curb ramps are being repaired on a year-by-year basis. One thing we wanted to note here is not only do we have contractors out there doing work, but also the DPW and the Public Works, that crew is also doing work out there as well. So DPW crews installed last year about 55 ADA ramps, about 2.19 miles of sidewalk, and about 3,100 feet of granite curbing. This number, I actually had to check this with Bernie, the 25,000 potholes were patched last year. But that is 27,000. So we were low on what we put in the presentation, but pretty significant amount of work is being done in-house and not just going to contractors and having contractors work through the construction season. So we wanted to make sure that we pointed that out. Upcoming work, we're beginning ADA ramp and sidewalk projects at Summer, Langley, Beacon Streets intersection, and Chapel Street and Watertown Street intersection as well. Traffic calming and bike lanes. So we wanted to make sure that we put a slide in here. This is a little bit small to see, so I'm not going to go through all of it, but this indicates not only are we doing the roadway projects and the sidewalk walk projects, but we're also implementing traffic calming where it's appropriate. Substantially complete projects, intersection improvements at Chestnut Street and Fuller Street, Pete Square enhancements, traffic calming and bike lanes at Albemarle Road. And then there's some upcoming projects that we identified there. And as part of traffic calming as well, also looking where we can install RFPs for safety as well. Bike lanes. We know that the bicycle network here in the city is very important for people to get around. So as part of the program, we're also completing bicycle lane installations as part of these projects when we're rehabilitating the roads and the sidewalks. So the recently completed ones, Brandeis Road and Lowell Ave, and there's some upcoming ones there as well. So some program updates and next steps. The program has gone on for the past 7 or 8 years, but it hasn't been without challenges. And one of the things that we did to kind of show some of the challenges that we've encountered throughout the program is how far is the dollar stretching? And I think that's important to talk about. We all know that costs have gone up in general in that time frame, but we actually did a side-by-side comparison between the 2017 when we put the models together versus what we're actually getting now. There's a couple factors that lead to this. Just overall cost of construction has obviously gone up, specifically right after COVID. And also, we've expanded the scope of the non-pavement roadway assets to include, we were always including the sidewalks along with the roadway, the mill and overlay and the reconstruction projects. But also the curb ramps, traffic calming, bike lanes, and also drainage improvements where they're needed as well. And what we've done is we've taken a look at some of the planning costs versus actual costs that we have in the program. And you can see in 2017, the actual costs were about $30 per square yard of pavement. And in 2025, our planning costs are $90 per square yard of pavement. So 3 times the cost. So we obviously have to account for that as we're developing the CIP and understanding how far the money is going to take us and when we're scheduling these roads on a year-by-year basis. When we go through the selection process, for those of you who've been in this before, you understand that this is a living, breathing document. We look at it on a year-by-year basis because we know that we can do an inspection on a roadway 1 year, we can have it scheduled for 3 years out. We can have a bad winter, we can have a big utility cut, whatever it may be, and that roadway, because of the ratings, might change in terms of where it's scheduled. Also, you know, we could have something scheduled for this year. We understand that there's a gas or a water main project that needs to be done next year, so it could get pushed off because of other utilities that are there as well. So this is kind of the process that we go through on a year-by-year basis. We look at the existing conditions on the right-hand side, we look at our budget. And then we have in here what's called a cost benefit value number that the program gives to us as a data-driven analysis and prioritizes the roads for us. So that takes into account traffic volumes, the roadway rating itself, the cost to do the repair that's recommended, and the life extension of that repair. And it basically puts all the roadways in order for us. Well, then we go from there, we take a look at the underground utilities, we take a look at the complete streets, looking at ADA and sidewalks improvements, and also the community needs as well. And we come up with our prioritization every year. So it starts out data driven, we take into the other accounts, and then we put it into the schedule. One of the things we wanted to point out here is kind of how much money has been spent over the years of this program. This is broken down into fiscal years. When we look at some of the numbers later on in the program, you'll see they're broken down by calendar year or construction year. It's just how we need to schedule out when the construction is going to take place. But just wanted to kind of show totals of the total investment that the city's made throughout the program. You can see in FY20, it started out at 5.5. There was actually a spike here in FY23 where it was almost 14.3 million. I believe that was due to some of the ARPA funding and some of the other investments that were made available to the city. And in FY25, we're looking at about $13 million of investment. Annual budget. So this is kind of, again, how I just spoke about it. There's FY budgets and then there's construction season budget. So in 2025, we're actually anticipating using about almost $16.5 million. That's some carryover from FY, some projects that were delayed or just didn't finish up the season. And then taking into account this year's budget as well. And then we see that the overall 26 budget right now for construction is back to 8 million. One of the things here that I wanted to point out is the typical budget for roads has been set at $9.5 million. Not all of that gets used straight construction. There's other things that we do with that money, specifically the traffic calming, the intersection improvements, if there's any engineering design that needs to take place to be able to construction the projects. All of that comes out of that 9.5 million. So on average, we're spending about 8 million on construction and 1.5 million on the other parts of the road program. But just kind of wanted to, I knew I was going to throw that number up there. The 8 million, people are going to ask what happens to the 9.5. So we are spending all of that money every year. It's just, I wanted to point out that there's other factors or other things that we do with that budget. For the 2025 planned construction, so summary of work. We're gonna do a lot of work this year. $16.5 million comes out to a lot of construction. But 23.8 miles of roadway construction. It may end up being the busiest year of this program yet. And we talk about the local roadways versus the arterials and collectors. We talked about the maintenance overlay program, which was on low volume roadways that are in poor condition. The city's made a concerted effort to make the investment there, and you'll see there's about, what is it, about 150
It's
roadways or so?
152 roadways.
Yep, so that comes out to about 14.6 miles of road. I'm not gonna go through each of these lists individually, but I wanted to highlight some of the bigger streets for planned major paving this year. Beacon Street, Homer Street, Winchester Street, Auburn Street, Church Street, for a total cost of about $10.8 million in construction. We have the full road list here of all the major construction projects. A little hard to see, but
It'll be online tomorrow.
I'll be posting it tomorrow. And I can go back to these slides too, if we need to. The maintenance overlays is about 131 roads to be paid, 14.58 million, a total cost of almost $5 million. This list will be impossible for you to see because it is a lot of roads. But again, this will be posted tomorrow as well. Intersection improvement projects, there's 2 of them that have been identified for this year: Spalding Lane and Hartman Road at Brookline Street, Franklin Road at Waverly Avenue. So those are identified on the map on the right hand side. And now I kind of want to get into the modeling of this program, because I know when we started this process, obviously we had our unit costs that were in place. And I wanted to kind of show everybody 2 things. One is how far our money is going to get us now compared to what it was back then. And the second thing is I wanted to kind of show you, and we promoted this at the beginning of the program, the idea was to improve the roadway network, get it in a place where we could do more pavement preservation. And I want to show you how that models a little bit differently when you get into that mindset of being able to do more pavement preservation. So this is our allocation right now in terms of how much money out of the $8 million we intend to spend on each of the different categories. And generally speaking, that will create life expectancy improvements for each of those roadways that are paved, and that will either improve or degrade the network. So you can see here, based on a number of different funding scenarios on the right-hand side, you have your 73.3 starting point. And you can see if we continue to use that $8 million because of the costs that have been that have escalated, we'll see diminishing returns here at the end. In order to stay even now, it went from $8 million to $14 million, which is obviously a significant difference. And this is under this scenario. So it takes the budget distribution, it puts it into each of these categories, and based on how those categories are set up and the percentages, it can tweak that model. And I kind of want to show you that on the next slide. So kind of look at, we're using 350,000 here for routine maintenance, 2.1 million on preventative maintenance, 4.5 on minor rehab, and then the maintenance overlays. If we go back to this picture where we're transitioning to more pavement preservation, I just kind of wanted to remind you here that we're doing more treatments, but at less cost. So you can see here, if we tweak this model slightly, basically taking about $400,000 on a minor rehabilitation and putting that into preservation and routine maintenance and distributing that, you can see that now to stay at an even number, you're at 13 million instead of 14 million. So when you do that over time, that's a big difference. So it's just slightly tweaking the model can create different results. But you have to have the roadways in better condition to be able to spend money on those categories. So I think we're at the point now where we're kind of looking at what is the best model moving forward. How much of that work can we do on a yearly basis, and understanding, you know, how long can we do that for before we have to kind of pick up and do more on the bottom of the treatments. So that's part of the model analysis that we're doing on a yearly basis. So just moving forward, I know I've been talking for a while, and I'm sure people have questions. We continue to do updates. This is kind of just a graphic kind of showing our yearly process. We, at this time of the season, we're finishing up developing the CIP, obviously doing the update to you all. And then construction season starts, and right away it's out there and the focus is all on construction. At the end of the season, we go in, we update the database, we make sure that none of the priorities have changed, and we start the whole process over again. The only difference in that is that on an every year basis, we're re-inspecting the roadways. So not only are we doing the updates of the work history, but we're getting all new data in. So we reprocess that, come up with new reports, kind of reset the benchmark, and then we kind of follow that plan for the next 2 years. So that's kind of the yearly process, and that allows us to kind of recalibrate, look at where the utility repairs are, things like that. And just make sure that we're not going to dig up a roadway a year or two after we pave it, and make sure that we're investing in the right roadways. So from there, that's the end of the presentation, but I think we're happy to take any questions.
Before we do questions, I have to say that we've been joined by Councillor Kalis from Ward 8 and Councillor Gentile from Ward 4. I neglected to say that we're joined by the CEO,
Oh,
CEO,
not
CEO.
CEO.
The CEO,
Motion by
Jonathan.
Thank
I
you,
gave you light promotion,
thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Jonathan Yo, and we have Ellen Stanian here from the mayor's office. Says no. Questions,
Oh, go ahead.
Councillor Leary?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Conrad, for that very in-depth discussion.
Absolutely.
I have a couple of small things that I just, can you tell me, I can't remember what the LiDAR stands for. Is that,
Want to handle that?
Yeah, so LiDAR is a technology that measures, call it telemetry, so it's sending out radar and taking actual measurements, so.
okay, so
Previous
those are
to
the
that.
trucks that go along with the little,
Yeah, it's got one big thing on the top and it sends out radar like an airport or a boat would do to detect other boats on the water. So it gives that actual measurement data and pairs it with the topography. So before that data, the only technology that was available was straight photography. So they would take a picture and measure all the cracks based on the photograph. Now we match that with GPS and the radar data so that we can
Right.
get actual measurements that are more in depth.
okay, I have seen those trucks going around.
Yeah.
Is that stand for something, LiDAR?
It does, and I can't remember exactly what it stands for,
Okay.
but that's how the technology works.
Okay. I wanted to ask if there's any funding for the bike lanes, could we go back to the bike lane slide?
It is included in our traffic calming.
It is,
And it's included in our pavement markings as part of our contract. So when we do mill and overlays, Beacon Street will be getting a new bike lane, a parking protected bike lane. From Hammond Pond to the,
so it's kind of enmeshed in everything.
it is meshed
So it's
into
hard to sort of
everything.
know.
Yes, exactly what we're spending on that. I can try and fine tune that for you if you'd like.
It'd be helpful just to have the, like, is, the projects where they're including bike lane improvements.
Absolutely, we can get you that. Almost every mill and overlay project, we do bike lane,
Okay,
And
as long as
if
they're
I could-
appropriate.
if I could add on to that, some points very soon, the bike, walk, ride and roll.
Will be available.
That's the name, I always.
Yes, walk, ride, roll.
The walk, ride, roll plan, the bike ped plan will be
Oh.
released, that Jen Martin is finalizing that, so more to come on that.
Yeah.
And we're, the two departments, planning and DPW, working very closely to make sure that plan meshes with everything that DPW is working on. So
Oh, I'm glad to
we've done a
hear
very concerted effort on that.
ride, walk, bike lane.
Walk,
Walk, ride,
ride,
roll.
Walk, ride and roll, that's
Something
even better.
Walk, ride, roll.
Okay, I'll look forward to that. I'm glad that you're including that because it's getting to be bike riding season.
Ned's been working very closely, Ned Caught, our transportation director, with Jen Martin on this.
Okay. I know that we have a big intersection project going on both the north and south side of the city. And I was just wondering when, particularly Franklin and Waverly, when is that starting?
The spring,
This spring.
It's starting this spring?
the other one will be the summer, obviously, to avoid any school issues.
Right, right. How long,
May first.
May first, how long will that take? Is that,
Do you have a thought on that, Brian?
We haven't, we met with a contractor out there, so they're starting, and they are going to provide us a schedule, so we're waiting on them to. They're trying to find, put together all of their schedules for their work for the year, and they'll give us that, in the next few weeks.
We'll be happy to provide that to you.
okay. And then I know that you're doing some sidewalk improvements at Chapel and Watertown Street, is that right?
It's part of the COD grant. So yes, we are.
Okay. What kinds of things, I know that that was done not all that long ago. I mean, in terms
So
of,
the ramps are out of compliance. It was a top priority for the Commission on Disability,
how long have they been out of compliance for?
probably since they were built, that I
Okay.
don't know,
Just-
just sorry.
Just gives me I remember when those went in and we had concerns.
It's 3 of the corners, 1 corner is fine.
Okay. So does that mean we're gonna have to redo all of them? Because then we had a lot
Three
of
of
them
them.
done that same way. I mean, in terms of, in general, there was a period we went through and did all big underset in Warren. We remember that. We did a lot of,
I do.
yeah, and it was hundreds of them, all very close, like in all one big swoop. So do those all have to be redone as well?
We have about 5,000 ramps that need to be redone. I do not know if those all need to be redone.
Okay. Cause I was just thinking they're not in really bad condition or anything.
So part of the problem with those, there aren't reciprocal ramps correctly aligned. There are 2 ramps at each corner.
Right,
They need to be-
they're in the
yes.
middle, so that directs you
these
into
are
the
gonna
middle,
be-
into the middle of the street
they'll be-
instead of the sidewalk.
Yes, anywhere that happens, we should correct it.
Well, that's everywhere.
It-
Okay, I'll let some other people ask a few questions. Thank you very much. President Moreno, I think you're next.
So, first of all, thank you. Refresh my memory, the calculation of PCI. Is there a uniform standard for that? Is there some judgment call when you look at a road? How does that, remind us how that works?
Yeah, there is an ASTM standard for that, and some of the technologies out there, like when we were using just the photography, they didn't follow that ASTM standard because they just didn't have the technology to do it. It was more done manually at that point. And the technology that we're currently using is, Frank, it's as close to the ASTM standard as the technology can be. And they say that they follow it pretty much to a T, so.
So if I looked at PCI, a road in Weston, say, and a road in Newton that had the exact same PCI of 73, and I put those roads side by side, they would pretty much look the same?
Yes,
As long as they're using the same technology,
well, yeah,
there's that too.
No, they wouldn't look the same, they wouldn't necessarily look the same. Cause a road might have a lot of potholes and that brings the number down, and a road might have a lot of cracking or other distresses that might bring it down, so. There's about, I think it's 10 or 12 different distresses that they look for with that ASTM standard. And that's where the LiDAR comes in, where they can take actual measurements instead of just guessing what the measurements are, which brings it up to that standard. And so all of those 12 different distresses come together at different rates within that standard to come up with that number. So if a road is a 70, it might have 10 really deep potholes. A road that's 70 in another community might have cracking along the entire. So all of the stresses go together, and there's a systematic way that they reduce the score based on that.
So if you have the road with lots of cracks versus the road with lots of potholes, but they're the same. Is there a judgment used as to which one you do first, or does it all come out in the wash a little bit?
I mean, generally speaking, when you look at a roadway that is a 70 in one community versus another roadway in a 70. The rideability of that roadway from somebody driving down it will generally be the same.
Okay.
So what we do is we use the number as the guide for the prioritization. But then when we look at the actual roadway itself and put it into the CIP for some sort of a repair, we match the right repair for the distresses that are there.
So I understand, I mean, I understand you're not gonna get perfection here.
Right.
I get that.
Yeah.
When we look at PCI from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, are we using, have we been using the same tools to assess PCI over time?
Yeah, so I would say, and I was here at the beginning of this. The technology that we used or actually the city used before I even actually started working with the city was a very similar technology to what we're using right now. They're different, but they're similar. That technology at that time to be able to do the road inspections was actually a little bit more expensive than we use now. The technology has gotten better, become more efficient, and that's why the costs are down. You get the same kind of results. But that technology versus what we're doing now is very similar.
I'm just trying to make sure we're measuring apples to apples as opposed to apples to oranges, so.
Yeah.
What you're saying is the tools are similar enough that we are really tracking accurately differences from one year to the other.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say in the middle, the second or third inspections that we did, technology was a little bit different, so that wasn't exactly apples to oranges. It wasn't exactly apples to apples, but I'd say the technology from the beginning to now is very similar.
So I think you said a little while ago that there was a lot of work that did not get done last year that's moving into this year. Did I miss that?
It's not a lot of work, it is Homer, Walnut Street, and a couple maintenance overlays that just didn't get done.
So we're gonna take the money that was allocated for that last year, we're gonna utilize it this year.
It rolls
And the
over.
plan is to get everything else that we've budgeted this year done this year, understanding there may be some
There may be some slides,
road
but
that doesn't get done.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you put something up a while ago about what happens if you spend, say, $20 million versus 8. Could you go back to that?
Sure.
I'm glad you're focusing on that chart, Mark. Yeah, this is really important.
So we're gonna spend, what, the 8 million next year?
Well, it's actually this upcoming season, it's about 16 million,
16.
correct?
But that's because we have carryover. right?
that's
Correct.
because we have.
All right, so
And
the-
ARPA,
And ARPA
And ARPA.
funding is what that is.
That was work it's really $8 million plus the work that didn't get done last year.
No, it's not the work, it's money that rolled over from, remember that we had to encumber all of the ARPA funds. So we intentionally encumbered for this year and planned the work for this year.
Well, the ARPA funds, so were a couple of years ago, right?
no, they're still being spent, we have 2 more years to
2
spend.
more years to spend it,
So we got the ARPA funds back in 2023.
Yes, but they're still being spent, so if you
Well,
look
we
at
can't-
FY
but the
25.
total of the ARPA funds is like 8.8 million, right?
Yes,
So
Yeah.
we can't be spending all ARPA funds.
oh no, that's not
Next
what
year.
you were, so we got our $8 million, right? That goes directly towards paving.
Right,
Plus the ARPA funding that was remaining, we've done a ton of ARPA work as well, probably $6 million worth of ARPA
so
work.
we have about 2 million of ARPA money
Yes.
left.
Yes,
We're gonna carry that over to this year,
yes,
gonna use it up this year pretty much.
yeah, we have to.
Okay,
pretty
so it's
much.
gonna be gone in 20, this is fiscal 25 or
Mhm.
calendar 25?
So this is.
It has to be gone by calendar 25, right?
It December 31st, 2026, correct?
Yes, it could go through next year, but
We're
we're
gonna-
gonna spend much of it this year.
Alright, so I just want to go back to the spending if we
Yeah.
could, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So I wanna just understand more where we are. Sorry.
This one.
Okay, so, whoops, right there, yeah, okay, so in 2022 and 2023, we spent less of city funds because we had all this extra ARPA money. 2024, we upped the city funds by $3 million,
Yes.
okay,
So it's important to note though, this was what was budgeted, doesn't mean we spent that. That was budgeted, so all of our roadway money, if we don't spend it, rolls over year to year.
I understand that, but but in 2025. We budgeted $9.6 million, right?
Yes,
Plus some grant money, leaving that aside. Of that 9.6 million, how much is included as rollover from the prior year?
1.5 million.
So we're rolling 1.5 million
Mhm.
over. Okay. So we're really spending 8 million of new funds next
Yes.
year. Okay. Get that, plus we have grant money, 3.2, is any of that grant money at risk?
I don't believe so.
No.
Would be chapter 90 funding, which,
So it's state funding, not dependent on federal funding?
Correct.
Okay,
yes,
so we're gonna have roughly almost $2 million more. This year than we had last year, except last year we used some ARPA funds to
yes.
level it off, okay.
Can I just
sorry.
jump in there and say, where is the rest of the 16 million coming from? That's 12.9, where's the other?
It's rollover from ARPA.
But it
Which is not on
can't be
that
just so
chart.
we spend.
It is.
It's up there
It's
further,
up there,
but
it's the 6.3 and the 2.5. So we have over $8 million
Which
of
you've not yet spent.
ARPA funding that we have not
Okay.
yet fully spent.
Okay,
I'm sorry. In 2022, we had roughly 5 million of city funds, we had more in grant funds, obviously. And we had 2.5 million of ARPA funds. If you
Yes.
combine the ARPA funds and city funds, that gets us roughly to where we are right now.
Yes,
We did not use the ARPA funds?
we use some of the ARPA funds, not all of it. The 2.5 is gone, that was spent.
Okay,
So then the next year, there was 6.358.
how much of that have we
in
used?
ARPA. I would need to check. But I
Okay.
think we had Newport.
like four of it or so, or
Close to 4.
well, it'd be 3.1 to get us up to 16 million.
so those are the dates or the years when the ARPA funds were approved by the, you know, and we moved into the program. But it takes a year or two to schedule all
It
of the
does.
work. And a lot of the ARPA funds were directed towards these small streets, and
And-
so they're small residential streets.
It's important to note that we are going out for a $5 million contract for paving for this year in order to do this work. So an additional contract. For
5
what we
million
do generally,
For what?
paving,
For paving of what?
paving both from mill and overlay and maintenance overlays.
As part of the 16 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure, if so
I'm
you have
sorry,
a
I'm just not
set, you
following
have
this.
We have,
you've had a stable of contractors you've been working with.
yes,
For the number of years. That stable of contractors are also working in other towns. There's
not enough.
enough of them
Contractors right
to
now.
get the work that we wanna get done here in Newton. So DPW went out and found another contractor and set up a new contract with
We're in the
them.
process.
So
of
we could really
setting-
accelerate
Yeah.
this work.
I'm sorry, I'll stop because
So
I'm
I
having
will
a
set-
hard time following this.
I will send you the full from 2018 through 2025 because it'll give a clearer picture, and then I'll take the actual construction fund spent annually and send you that and.
So what I also want, and I'll finish up here, leaving this aside, Conrad, I think you said, look, if we spent $20 million, we would in the long run save a lot more money, is that accurate?
Well, what that's gonna allow you to do, and I'll just go back to that other slide.
And I'm not saying we have $20 million to spend, but it's
Right.
useful to understand it.
No, it's not that if you spend 20 million, you'll save money. What I was trying to say is, as the roadways get in better condition. So say for instance, you know, you spent 17 million, like you're spending 16.5 this year. In theory, with the model, that those roadways are going to improve. The higher you get the roadway rating, the more you can shift the distribution of the budget more towards preservation. If you spend more money on preservation because the model can sustain that, you can save money. That's how you save money, is shifting the distribution of where the money is spent.
If we spend 16 million next year, where do you expect us to be?
I expect you to uptick probably to around a 75.
So about a 1.7 increase.
Yes.
If you continue to spend at that rate, you're gonna get to a higher and higher level. Presumably, eventually, for the same dollars, you'll get a lot more done.
Exactly.
So if you then. Okay, I think I understand that.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to call him Council Gentile first, and then I'll come to you. Council Gentile?
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So I just had a couple of quick questions on the carriageway project down in Auburndale. So hopefully somebody is there that can answer them. I just wanted to know where we are as far as the time frame, like what's the percentage of the project that has been completed, and if we're on time or if we're behind a little bit. And then two specific questions. There was an issue at Islington and Com Ave. The intersection, we got a lot of complaints, and Council Block worked on this a lot, about trying to make turns coming out of that intersection. And I believe that there was one modification that was made that helped to improve things, but it was my understanding that there was a possible additional design change that was being considered, so I wanted to know if anything's happened there. And then my final question is, if you all remember, we've got a pretty substantial roundabout that is going in down past the Marriott where the gas station is, and I haven't seen anything that indicates that there's any work that started on that, and I'm just wondering where that is on the schedule.
Okay. The Islington at it's at Islington at Com.
Islington at Com.
So they did do a test run with the fire truck and one of the larger DPW trucks. That worked out well. I know that Jen Martin, Ned Cod, and I believe some of the fire chiefs are meeting on that intersection next week.
Okay,
The Com Ave Auburn roundabout, they have just kicked off that start of that project. I believe they're on the bridge right now.
so that has started though?
It's just started.
Yes.
Okay,
Out there doing test pits and stuff right now on the westbound lane.
okay. And then the project overall, are we pretty much where we expected to be, or has there been any holdups?
There's been a few holdups. I'll get you a full schedule. John Daglian meets with them regularly, probably every other week, so I will send you his most recent.
All right, that's fine, thanks.
You're welcome.
Council Getz?
Okay, so if we just stay on this chart, we're gonna be spending 16 million, right?
Yes.
All right, so then we should uptick quite a bit more, right? In terms of- Or that you can't add it to this.
Yeah,
We're
so-
spending
Okay.
so much on maintenance overlays.
Okay.
Conrad can-
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So the
We're down
distribution,
here.
the distribution for this year isn't actually modeled here.
Okay.
So we can kind of run that model to kind of
Okay.
say where we're likely to be.
All right, and then it just sort of seems as if the spread is pretty even here, and at some point it should shift, in terms of how you invest.
Yes.
Those distributions should change.
Yes, and this
So-
is a theoretic model. If you spend the same amount, spend it on the same exact things every year.
Oh,
It's just to kind of give you an idea of
Okay.
the trajectory.
Okay, all right, and then, I frequently go by the intersection of Fuller and Chestnut, and that has been reworked. And I think that it needs some sort of teaching pieces to it. Because there's quite a bit, there's a part of the curving just goes zeros and goes straight into the road. And it's hard for people to even interpret the difference between the curve and the roadway. And I don't know if anybody's driven that they've experienced that as well. And I don't know if it's too tight or and I don't wanna call it a design flaw, but it needs some sort of instructional so that then people can interpret the
We'll talk
intersection.
to NICOG about that.
Okay,
Okay.
right, just because I drive it so
Yeah.
frequently and it's relatively.
It's
new.
really supposed to be a visual
Okay.
cue not to drive on the stamped paper.
Okay,
It also
Right.
needs to be,
It does need some paper
Okay.
markings.
which will help
Right.
to align people.
yeah, cause it's just very, it's fuzzy right now. And it's really hard to sort of figure out how to negotiate that one specific intersection. And then in the, for the potholes, you had just mentioned that 27,000 were filled,
Yes.
and that's just like in one season? Oh my gosh, okay, how much does it cost to do that?
We have an in-house pothole crew, so
Okay,
it's all done in-house
okay,
and we use the asphalt recycler. So we really streamlined that. It's much more efficient and cost effective.
alright.
It will be part of the budget presentation in 2
Okay.
weeks.
All right, cause that seems incredibly, a lot, in terms of
It
just
is what we
doing.
average. It was 26,000 in FY '24.
Okay, and
So-
I mean, not to be so primitive about like, but they're pretty consistent, in terms of coming up and out. So once the roads get upgraded, the likelihood of potholes is less.
Hopefully less potholes.
Okay.
The roads are the less potholes.
All right, right. And then just that one, there was two of the mill and overlay, it looked as if the asphalt was getting dumped. Does eventually that asphalt get recycled? It looks like it was going into a truck, and then the other version was a green version, the reuse
The
one.
cold in place.
Yeah,
The contractors take, as part of the contract, they take that away. It gets used on a number of different things.
okay, but it is ultimately repurposed.
Well, ultimately, it's the contractor's responsibility for
Also,
it, so,
okay.
they repurpose it however they choose.
So,
So it gets put in, mixed in with gravel, in some areas they, can use it on other projects. It's used sometimes to put under guardrails to manage weeds and things under guardrails. And some of it's also actually recycled back into asphalt. So there's a certain percentage that you can use of recycled material in asphalt, until it'll affect the performance of the asphalt that you're putting down. So there's a lot of different ways that they can use it. So the contractor is in charge of disposing it, or bringing it to the place where they recycle it and use it for those other things.
okay, but we in no way know any of this information, it's.
We do utilize some of the millings in our recycling program for our
Okay.
recycled asphalt that we make at our Elliott Street yard.
Okay.
We use about 30% in each ton
Mhm.
of material that we make. 30% is millings from the grindings of our roadways. And then we use the other 70% is all the old asphalt that we dig up from water trenches and sidewalk repairs. We call that chunks.
Mhm.
So you can utilize 70% of the chunks, the solids, and 30% of the fines, which are the millings, and we use that to make our asphalt bottles.
Oh,
So we do utilize some of it, but we can't possibly utilize all of it, there's too much,
okay,
not enough storage. Some does get recycled by us, city.
that's it. Okay, that's it.
So I would, maybe this is for the commissioner, or maybe it's for you, Conrad, I'm not sure, but you seem to be providing, I wasn't here when you started your work, I was on a different committee at the time.
Sure.
So you seem to be providing the data collection, the data analysis, and then the planning for the DPW versus with regard to roads. Does that sound like what you're doing?
Yes, I think we work as a team, and we're at this point, we're fairly well integrated. We're working hand in hand to make sure that we understand not only the needs of the city, but also all of the other projects that are going on, and make sure that when we create our CIP, it's in tandem with all of the other programs that are going on in the city.
We meet weekly.
So
On
is this
pay- on
a,
the
is
roads
this
program.
a long-term contract, an annual contract? How does this work?
Annual contract. We can renew for 3 years, every year we renew, and then we re-up.
I see. And how many staff are working on this?
So we include our streets division, obviously myself, the deputy commissioner. Apex. City engineer.
Well, I meant how many
Oh, for
contracts?
that?
Yeah.
Oh, for us at times, this time of season, it's very busy. Obviously, we're finalizing the CIP. And so we have, 2 or 3 staff members at periods working on these types of projects. And we do this for other communities too. We're probably in about 15 different communities that we do this type of
I
work
see.
for.
Okay, just wanted to understand the relationship.
Yeah.
And my question, you just answered for Councilor Getz about what happens to the mill and overlay. Several years ago, there was a process that was on, I think it was Winchester Street. It was very hot
Yes.
and burned the trees and the leaves. And what
Oh,
happened to that
that's
part?
hot in place.
On place recycling, so,
We may be
You should
using
have
that
been
this
kidding
year.
back then, it was a very exciting.
that wasn't my best update.
Just so you know, we did use that a couple of years ago on Washington Street.
Yeah.
And you didn't burn any trees, right?
Nope.
We burned one.
One tree.
It was a dead tree,
One dead tree, yeah.
one dead tree.
Yeah.
That's one more than we should have, but that's
It's
okay.
a great
Like cabins, like-
tree, but we have to think about the timing and how many trees are on the street, obviously.
So we don't have any plan to use that in
We
the
do.
near future.
Yes, we do.
It wasn't on the list.
Because we haven't determined it will be next year.
I see. Okay,
So we would do it in the fall.
Yeah.
And
We're
on.
more careful when we're doing it now.
And with streets with high canopies.
I
Tree
see.
canopies, so they're up higher,
So we don't catch them.
they don't get the heat.
I see. Okay, it just wasn't one of the things that you listed in your toolbox, so I
Yeah.
was wondering what happened to it.
I didn't list all of them in the toolbox, and we kind of revisit those based on the types of roadways we're planning on doing on a yearly basis. So it's not on the schedule for this construction season right now, so I left it out of the presentation.
So there was I forget what it was, there was, I think it was Lowell Ave from Washington to Foster Street. Was on your slide for a project that you're going to be doing
Sure.
No,
as an
we
intersection.
did. No, we did
Yeah.
that portion of Lowell.
I
It was a Sammy.
Can you maybe go to sort of towards the
Concrete
end
roadway.
of your slides? It was somewhere.
Oh, was it the Washington Street pilot?
I have no idea what it is. I just took it, wrote it down because it's a very small piece of roadway.
Really? Because we did Lowell from Washington to Watertown.
Okay, well, it was somewhere on your slides and I was wondering what that was.
Oh.
It's-
When you see the slides tomorrow in greater detail, let us know and we can.
We will get the information.
Yeah, let's
for you.
This one here?
Lowell,
Yeah,
Washington.
that was a completed project.
Oh, those are completed.
Yes, so these ones here were examples of arterials and collectors that have been completed during the
Okay.
program.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know there are a lot of smaller roads that are in terrible shape. And obviously I couldn't read the slide, they
Yeah.
had all of that, are a lot of those roads that are in terrible shape on that list of to-dos?
Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
That is that list right there.
Yeah,
Those are all the small roadways. So basically, this gets all the way down to a 50 PCI. So that's roadways that are in the worst condition in the community. And those are all, that's basically the only thing that's on this list. You can see on the right-hand side, the PCI number is on the right-hand side of each of these roads. So you can actually see the bad roadways being
I think
completed.
we may have rounded up because they're 49.5, we didn't capture them all.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges, one of the realities is that a lot of these roads, the last time they were measured, were not in the 30s and 40s, they were in the 50s.
Right.
And some of these smaller roads have gone downhill quickly. So that is why we need to address these. And you know, we're getting complaints about all these roads. Roads in thirties and forties are not great roads at all. These are small streets that are, you would know that you're driving down a bad road. So we want to get further up into the fifties, and we will, and we just need to keep
This
this
year?
program. Well, this year we'll get up to here, and then hopefully in the future, we will keep going. Seriously, I mean,
Yeah.
it's gonna take, as you saw, the budget realities are that, you know, the money doesn't go nearly as far as it did when SETI Warren. This was an aspirational program of $9.5 million, because it wasn't funded. It still isn't completely funded. We rely every year on free cash. Certainly we get chapter 90, but that's only $2.3 million a year. So we've continued to add money to the budget every single year, but we still rely on free cash to get us there. Fortunately, we had ARPA, and we've used a lot of ARPA money.
And fair share.
And the fair share, the millionaire's tax money that has been coming, not sure if that will continue to come to the city. So what, you know, we're gonna need to find ways to fund this program. And to keep those small roads from slipping over down that precipice there, because that's when, you know,
Couldn't we
people
just
really
call
are
that
getting
traffic
upset.
calming? We just call that traffic calming.
Well, if you could, you try that.
There's having something in the state of 20.
Yeah, if you live on that street, you might not
Some
be
people
happy.
actually like their streets like that. Because people don't wanna go down.
The good news, and the really great news is that we have a great team of that DPW and consultants and this committee. This committee has been just able, you all understand these things pretty well. So I think everyone here is a good team to keep this program money going. It's, you know, it's gonna require funding and commitment. So.
And one of the difficulties that Jonathan alluded to too is that, you know, roadways that are in the 50s. When we did the last scan prior to this, we actually got all the way up to the 50.
Yeah.
And then we rescanned the roads and we found that all these roads are now in the 30s and 40s. The big difficulty here, and this is why preservation becomes so important, is because you can see this curve, right? When it gets to somewhere in that fair category, which is really between like 70 and 50. You get a bad winter, that roadway deteriorates very quickly. You have to plow it a bunch of times, there's water intrusion, it depends what types of defects are in the roadway. If it's a lot of cracking, the water gets into the roadway, it pops up those potholes. So that's why what we're trying to do is we know that there's gonna be bad roadways every single time we scan. What we hope is that we're catching some of those roadways before they fall off this curve. And if we can, then that's keeping those roadways in good condition at much less cost. So that's the whole idea behind pavement management.
There's that connector part of Fuller Road, is it Fuller Road? I think not Fuller Street. Anyway, between Chestnut and Commonwealth, that
Mhm.
really has deteriorated. Is
We're
that,
doing that this
Yeah.
year.
okay, that's on the list,
That's
that's
Full
good.
Street, it's all the way from there to the Conrad.
Okay, good. So we have a number of residents who would like to comment. Is there anybody who would object to my calling on them?
I don't know.
Okay,
Like to hear.
so I think the first one on the list is Mr. Pelletier. Would you, ask him to unmute?
Go. Oh, hello, everybody. Thanks, John Pelletier, 103 Madison Ave, Newtonville. Actually don't have any bike question this evening, surprisingly enough. One of the things that I was noticing, I saw that I guess Homer Street from Walnut over toward Newton Center is coming up again. And I was just doing a quick check. It looks like that was last done in maybe 2010, 2011, at least based on Google. And so that would be coming up on, 15 years. I'm just interested, are we looking at, the last time a road was milled or, and for that average life, and are we actually seeing that life extension as we do this preventative, treatment? So I'm curious, obviously that was milled before a lot of this work really started coming into force. And I believe there's been a little bit of sealing on that, but just curious, that seems like we just remilled it and 15 years ago, and now we're back at it again. So just curious about that one. I had two other points. I'll do both of them and I can shut up. Interested around, obviously sidewalks have a lower risk. You mentioned that around damage. They do last a long time. Some here in Newtonville are over 100 years. Have we looked at, mapping tree varieties or age of trees to kind of understand areas of potential risk? Because most of the risk is usually around upheaval of that sidewalk due to tree roots. So curious about that. And then my final kind of thought here, it's more of a process, or if there's latest technology, specifically around potholes. And I do this because I'm biking on Lewis Terrace on that downhill, and there's a really bad pothole section there. Even though it's been filled, it's not it's still an issue of honestly knocking stuff off my bike. I've actually had it happen. The issue of potholes when they're filled not being even with the surface. And I know there's different ways of potholes. Usually it's dumped in, they do a quick little roller over it and call it a day. But now it's created a vertical, I guess deflection for lack of a better word, versus a divot. And that vertical deflection for me is just as bad as a divot. So I'm wondering if you're seeing any of the latest technology in terms of ability to get potholes flatter, I'd say more even with the surface for better rideability. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, I think first off, great microphone. Very clear. In terms of the first question about are we tracking which roadways were done at the beginning of the program, we actually have a work history all the way back, I think, to 2005.
It's about 2005, yeah.
And we're only kind of stating the ones that have been done as part of the program, but we do have work history all the way back. We understand that there's a perception that a roadway was done in 2015 and it is now being done again. But for us, it's really about the data and the existing conditions. We obviously want to make sure that we're getting the longevity out of those roadways, and we're kind of tracking that with the treatments. We've actually tweaked some of the treatments that we did in year 1 and year 2 of the program because we weren't getting the life expectancy or are getting better life expectancy. So we continue to monitor that. We do understand that roadways were done, but it's not necessarily all about, or that's not really in the process of prioritizing the roadways. If the roadway needs to be done or needs to be preserved, we're going to attack it at the time that it needs to be attacked. Yes.
Both of them were preservation.
Yeah, so the last time Homer was done it was actually done with a preservation treatment. So people might not realize that it's a preservation treatment. So that was anticipated to last in between 6 and 10 years. It's right in the middle of that right now. So now we're going to actually do the paving on it.
They bonded wearing course of labor.
Yeah.
So preservation again.
Yep.
To keep it in good condition.
Exactly. It's actually very similar to the example that I used, where you're doing preservation twice instead of full milling and overlaying once. So that's a really good example of using preservation multiple times in a road.
Is that all the questions that he had?
The trees.
The trees.
Do you want me to take the trees? I do.
Yeah, I know.
I know that Mark
Yeah.
Welch, who is the deputy commissioner of Parks and Rec and is also responsible for the tree program, has shifted what is being planted today versus what was being planted, say, 10 to 15 years ago. So it's a more appropriate tree that doesn't cause the heating.
Right, he does have, I think one of your questions was, does he have, do we have an understanding of what kinds of trees are where? And I think the answer is yes. Mark does have a very good inventory. We know that different types of trees, and it depends on the situation of where they're planted and how they're trying to get, the roots are trying to get to water. So you have different types of scenarios where you have upheavals depending on different types of trees. So, obviously we're trying not to cut down trees, even where there are upheavals, and use various types of treatment to get around a
We
tree.
use the asphalt to.
Yeah, and use an asphalt
to give it
to
some
do that. So,
flexibility.
yeah, I mean, it is something that different communities struggle with. You go to Cambridge, they use there's communities want to keep their trees. And so we will do that, but we want, you know, accessible sidewalks as well. So it is a challenge, and conditions change, and it is something that when you completed your analysis of all the sidewalks in the city, certainly you took note of that, and that's part of the
Yes.
factor. So we have ratings on every little stretch of sidewalk in the entire city now. So and that's used for your planning.
Plan.
So
Then the last point that I think he had was on the filling of the potholes and the technology there. Unfortunately, when you're filling 25,000 potholes per year, it's tough to implement different technologies, and obviously the roadway crew is doing the best they can there. There are technologies out there to do a little bit more of a permanent patch there. Unfortunately, they're more costly, and they take more time. So at the volume that DPW is doing those on a yearly basis, I don't know if you want to speak to that, Bernie.
Yeah, no, we try to make them as level and smooth as we can, and if we do an area where we find numerous number of potholes and it's cold weather time, we will go back in the spring and the summer, look at it. We have our own milling machine, we'll mill out that section, repave it. We have an infrared machine that will go in and try to smooth them out as much as we can. Sometimes we'll leave them because we know we're gonna pave that street this season or the following season, so there's no reason to waste funds and time when we're gonna repair it that way, but we do have other methods and we try to keep up with it.
Okay, so, thank you, and now Mr. Heller.
Hi, Adam Peller, 28 Daniel Street. I'm on the Transportation Advisory Group with John. I have a couple questions relating to Newton Center. If I remember correctly, there was some road work planned. It looked like around Trinity, maybe near the playground on Center Street, and curb work kind of near Sweet Tomatoes. I was wondering, as it seems like there are some opportunities there. I was wondering if it's just going to be done in place, or if there's any thinking around some geometry changes and improvements. And I can give you some examples. I think a couple years ago with Director Friedman, we talked about the changes since the fire department is now operating kind of in a different direction. Whether the intersection at Willow could be improved. Nobody ever stops there. And the crossing shortened. Is a very long school crossing. Similarly, near Sweet Tomatoes, it would be great to see curb extensions, kind of like we have up by Union Street from the Union, is it the Union Twist money? And I know we had put off the curb work at that intersection in anticipation of curb extensions. We didn't want to put in like ADA curbs and have to rip them out to make roadway improvements. So is any of that in the plan? And if not, could it be?
So we are doing an ADA improvement at Langley Sumner Beacon. And in order to get the slopes, I suspect that we will be bumping out.
Okay, that's great. And how about Willow? Are there any geometry changes planned there?
Not right now.
All right. Thank you.
We're paving there.
Yeah, once it's paved, the opportunity is probably gone for a generation. So I just wanted to point that out.
That
Thanks.
does not preclude any type of traffic calming or bump outs ever.
Okay. Next, you all set?
Yep, thanks.
Next is Ms. Hanser.
Okay, thank you. So my first question is pretty quick. I'm not quite sure how you define preventive maintenance. So could you define that for me so I understand it? And my second question is, I understand all the plans to pave the roadways. My concern is the prevalence of digging up roadways after they've been paved, and we're paying twice. And one example near me is Ward Street. They did a wonderful job of paving Ward Street. I think 2 years ago, put new curbs in and everything, put a bike lane in, and you can't ride on it anymore. You can't bike on it. I have a friend whose son fell off of his bike. So what's your vision about how we're gonna deal with Eversource, 'cause they seem to just dig up the roadway when and where they want. So, I think those are my two basic questions. Somebody, mentioned, the problem about the snows, and I think that that's an important question. So I'm just following up on that about, how about a winter like this one where we didn't have a lot of snow, but we did have a lot of freezing? And then melting and then freezing and then melting. So that, what does that do to your roadway maintenance? That's it. Thank you.
Here, I'll start with that one first. So, the freezing and thawing actually can be as destructive as the snow can. So the more we get freeze and thaw, the colder it gets, that can actually hurt the roadway network just as much as having snow on the ground, having to plow it. Her first question was around preventative maintenance. So preventative maintenance, we categorize that as typically a treatment that is from curb to curb. And it's some sort of thin overlay. So it's minimal grinding of the roadway, maybe some spot repairs, but some sort of treatment from curb to curb. We see that on the bonded wearing course treatment that we really use, which is a very, very thin, special version of asphalt pavement. That goes down with that special machine. And there's other ones out there as well, such as microsurfacing that we've used in the past, which is generally from curb to curb. Somebody goes to work and comes back at the end of the day, they think they got a new roadway. Really, that's just a minimal treatment to keep that roadway in good condition. And then what was the third?
Ward Street.
Ward Street. I'm gonna let you-
Well, it was about Eversource and digging up the roads broadly.
It's usually National Grid and it's usually a grade 1 leak. We coordinate with all of the utility companies as we make our plans. However, if there's a grade 1 leak, National Grid has to go in. I do know on Ward Street that the MWRA is over there right now planning for their next phase of water main installation for both the city and MWRA. It's gonna continue the project and it's going from Waverly to Center Street.
And I know that there's been times during the program, and I think Chestnut Street was a good example of this, where we understood that there was going to be some sort of a utility project going in. So we did, you know, essentially what everybody looks like a brand new roadway. We did a quicker repair because we knew that utility project was gonna last a year, 2 years, 3 years, and we didn't want to make people drive on it for 3 years in really bad condition. I think Ward, we've done some of that as well.
Ward, we did a little bit of that, and I should let you all know that we'll be doing that probably on Auburn Street from Lexington to Con. Eversource is going to go in there, but it is in really tough shape, so we want to do a quick treatment on that to make sure that we don't lose the road.
And generally speaking, we don't want to do that, but on arterial and collector roadways where there's heavy traffic, there's people using those frequently on a daily basis. Sometimes there's a necessity to go in and do some sort of temporary repair, just so we can get through the 2 to 3 years of utility improvements that need to be made without making people drive on what would be considered a really, really poor roadway.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate all that. I just think it's a shame because my understanding is that they also say that they're gonna pave it properly, but it's really always just a patch job and the road is never the way it was before they started. So I don't know if there's any way to renegotiate how much the city gets from them when they do that, because it would certainly help us to repair the road so it's really in the condition it was before they started.
They are required, if they open a road within 5 years of it being paved, to restore it curb to curb. Sometimes they do the actual work during the winter or so close to the winter that they can't do the full repair till the spring or summer.
Okay, thank you. Just had a quick point on that, Shauna, are we still having between like 3 and 4 grade 1 gas leaks a week? Is,
And we received one last week, it depends.
cause that was what the fire chief told me years ago, but that
It's
does add up.
It's about 2 a week, I would say.
2 a week. Oh,
Mhm.
so yeah. Okay, I just wanted to check on it.
Okay, next is Mr. Miller.
Hi, thank you everyone. Gary Miller from 16 Shawmut Park in Upper Falls. I have a couple of quick comments before I go to my complaints. First of all, to the counselor's question, earlier question about LiDAR, what it stands for, it's light detection and ranging. I have the fortune to have Google at my disposal as opposed to you. Secondly, I was grateful to see Mechanic Street in Upper Falls listed as something to be worked on this year. It's a small street, but it's an important one as it's going to be an emergency access route to the North End project. And so I was happy to see that that was on the list. Now to the complaints and so forth. Ellis Street in Upper Falls is a collector road from what I saw on the map. It wasn't on any list that I could tell as we went through it. And so I'm presuming there's some other reason why it's not being worked on. It's in very bad condition from my observation driving on it every week. And then the next issue is Petty Square. Fantastic project, by the way. It's it's a wonderful project. However, the brick pedestrian way in front of Little Luke's is already deteriorating, and like that was just put in like not that long ago, and so I'm like flabbergasted that it's already noticeably deteriorating, and I'm like, is that like insured? Can we get that repaired? So or what's causing that? And then lastly, on the ARPA funds, I have heard some cases where the Trump administration has tried to claw back some funds in some other areas, and I'm wondering if there's any risk that the remaining ARPA funds will be clawed back or attempted to be clawed back by the administration. Thanks.
Take those. So Ellis Street, I will check on for you. Thought it was on a list. Petty Square, it is, as you called it, insured. The contractor will be repairing that. We are working with them right now to come up with a good solution and a treatment that works. And what was your last?
Clawback.
Oh, clawback. All of our money's encumbered within contracts, so it is technically spent, so I think they would have a hard time clawing that back.
Okay, all set? The next, last but not least, is Mr. Holly.
Hi there, thank you, and thanks for this presentation. I've been in and out of it a little bit. I've got a sick kid at home. But one question that I had is, I understand the analysis is done for relatively long sections of road because that's how you'd like to pave them. But I've always wondered what happens where I would assume that the condition actually isn't necessarily uniform along that section, or do you use that as a way to break the sections up? For instance, if there's some sort of underground condition that would make a section of the road be potentially worse, how does that fit into the evaluation of the roadway? And how would you, if it is a long stretch where you have that section that's like that, is there an exception mechanism that you can deal with that specific area on the assumption that that could decay at a different rate?
Sure. For the entire road network, for constructability purposes, we break up the roadway network from intersection to intersection, and that's generally how it's done. So obviously in a city setting, that's pretty short blocks usually, and it's not major intersection or major intersection, it's every intersecting street is usually its own segment. So the city's pretty well broken down in that manner. Where we see serious changes between, maybe there's a paving joint in between intersections, we've had the ability to break those segments and understand those separately. So I would say 99% of the city is broken up intersection to intersection, but there may be situations where we've broken it because of pavement condition. Yep.
I think you're muted. He's muted.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. I guess, the public presentation of it is really longer sections, so it's great to know that internally you have these little short sections. So
Right.
that's awesome. Thank you.
Can I just ask a question of the relationship between the walk, ride and roll plan and your work? Can you explain that? I mean, we haven't seen the plan yet, so we don't know what's in it, but I assume since it has to do with sidewalks and bike lanes, that you have to be knowing something about it.
Sure, we've always done the bike lanes when we can on our major projects. So we will coordinate with the plan to ensure that we're getting as many of those as we can.
So there may be stuff coming up in the plan that that you guys don't know about yet, that will
Yes.
change, maybe modify.
Probably not going to change our paving. Our paving is guided by the PCI
Okay,
and the best treatments and so forth. But we will include bike lanes, and
I
when
see.
we can, we will do additional bike lanes.
okay. Good. Anybody else
What
have?
was your other, but you had one more?
No, that was it.
That was it?
That was it.
You wanna hold the item or do you wanna, any item?
Are you coming back to us in the budget? Is there-
Coming back for the budget,
Is there
and
a
we'll be
reason
back
for
next
budget?
year for the update.
Yeah. I don't think so, I think as long as we put it on
Yeah,
the yearly.
yeah, I think you come back.
I'll
to
move
that
every
to,
anyway.
I'll move to NAN.
Okay, so we have an NAN, not because it isn't important, but because you come back to us annually and give us an update. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, ayes have it, and I think. our
Thank
work-
you.
Very much.
Thank you very much.
all.
Thank you.